Hey, Todd McFarlane here. I hear that you want some answers to your question, Patient X. That's like Professor X, the head of the X-Men. So we'll call you the X-Man. All right, X-Man, let's go through it. How do you make a character, right? Look at you come up with a reason why they exist, and then you come up with 4 or 5 sort of different reasons during your story, whether it's a short one or a long one, in which there's jeopardy and that good and bad things happen to them. So what you don't want to have is a character who, over time, just like a good TV show character or in a movie, that when you first introduce them, by the time you get to the end of it, your story, they're the exact same person. So move them along, which means that either they get nicer over time, they get meaner over time, they get more jealous over time, they get stronger over time, they get more forgetful over time. Something. There has to be something that changes with your character. How to describe all that to your artist, which is another one of your questions. I think that's questions 2 and 4. Just look at first thing first. Just sit down, find your artist, and just talk with them. Tell them what you have in your head. And use examples that they would understand. So in other words, you could say, hey, I think that this guy should act like the sheriff on The Walking Dead. Or I think he should act like Joffrey, sort of a bit of an SOB from Game of Thrones. So if you can have that conversation, then when you actually write it on paper, then the artist knows who that character is, both good and bad, in their personalities, and it's easy for them to then draw the scenes with the personality involved with it. So your other question was, do you put any of your personal experience answers? Of course you do, right? None of us work in a vacuum. I've never really invented anything original. So what I would do is take all the things that you've gone through in life and go, how can I put them in a story and apply them to a comic book story, whether it's a superhero story or it's something a little more realistic. So all the good things you've had in your life, trying to apply those to situations when things are bad, and all the things that have gone bad, try to apply those to your character when things are going good, so that everything isn't always good or everything isn't always bad. You keep mixing it in and out. Here's another tip. Again, it's one of your questions at the end. Make sure that you rarely have a scene where it starts and ends exactly the same. So if 2 people are super happy at the beginning of the scene, make sure that both those people are not happy at the end of the scene, and both those people are really angry with each other at the beginning of the scene, make sure they're not angry at the end of the scene. You have to basically, at times, what they call turn the scene. So if somebody comes in happy, then you basically turn it. Look, here's an example. I'm sure you've seen the movie before, right? The boyfriend goes to make up with the girlfriend. The girlfriend he thought was, not being nice to him. So what does he do? He goes and gets some flowers, walks to her house, and just as he walks to her house, he sees from a distance the girl's kissing somebody else, and he thinks, and he throws the flowers down and he leaves. So it started that he wanted to be nice and go see the girl and actually have a good time and apologize to her, and instead he ends up leaving angry, and we find out that the guy that was kissing her was her brother who had just come in, and she hadn't seen him for 3 years. So it was an innocent kiss, but from a distance, the boyfriend saw something, and he just basically flipped. So what started as a good scene ends up being a sour scene. Let's see what else you have here. How do you make the correct storyline? Look, there are no correct. There's no bad storylines. They're just stories. Every story is true if you write it. So nobody's going to basically say that person wouldn't do that or that person wouldn't do this. The only time that there's incorrect choices if you're being inconsistent with the character over time. So, in other words, you wouldn't write a story with Batman with a bazooka. Why? Because for 40 years he's never had a bazooka and he doesn't shoot people. So you wouldn't do inconsistency. But if you're creating a whole new character, anything you want to put down is good for you. How do you write your script? There's 2 ways. There's 2 methods. One, you do a full script, almost like a movie script. You can Google something, put movie script, and there's examples of it. You give a description, you give who's talking, and then you give the words that are coming out of their mouth. The other way to do it, which is option B, is you do an outline. So you just sort of loosely describe what's going on, and then after their artist draws it, what you've described, right? You go, hey, I've got a giant octopus, jumps up on top of a boat. All the guys on the boat try to attack it. It grabs 6 or 7 of them, and then it ends up starting a fight like, don't worry about what the words are. Let him draw that, and then you can put the words on it second. So you can either put the words first and describe everything, or you can just sort of give a loose outline and sort of like describing any story that you have to your friends of like what happened. If somebody says, hey, how'd your day go today, and you give people sort of a rough outline, you can do it that way and then put the words in later. So my tip to you, keep writing, keep reading, watch movies, read books, and be aware. Don't watch it necessarily for the entertainment. Watch it for the technique of how they're moving characters around. And then I would keep sending my samples off to people and keep showing it to people as much as possible and get as much input. So, all right, Professor X, good talking to you. Wish you the best of luck. I hope you take over the world, and someday you're writing Spawn.